This is the part of the Chrisean Rock saga that does not disappear when the live ends, when the comments move on, or when the next Blueface clip floods the timeline. While people were busy arguing over who disrespected who played the wrong song, who got kicked out, and who was trying to embarrass who online, a California courtroom was dealing with something a lot colder and a lot more permanent. Money. Liability. A paper trail. And in that room, the noise got translated into consequences. Because here is what makes this update hit different. Chrisean Rock is not just dealing with another messy headline. Chrisean Rock is now staring at a legal pattern that is getting harder to explain away as misunderstanding, trolling, bad timing, or internet exaggeration. One case ended with a default judgment worth nearly $40,000. Another case involving James Wright Chanel is still hanging over Chrisean Rock in civil court even after the criminal case already led to a no-contest plea, jail time, probation, and a stay-away order. And while all of that is happening, Chrisean Rock is still getting pulled into online chaos involving Blueface, Dean the Great, livestream drama, and fresh arguments that keep the spectacle alive while the legal reality gets more serious by the month. So let's separate the smoke from the fire, because that is where a lot of people are getting confused. There are at least 3 different lanes colliding in public conversation right now. The first lane is the Lashala Irby case, the one that ended with a default judgment after Chrisean Rock did not show up and did not meaningfully participate. The second lane is the James Wright Chanel matter, where the criminal case already produced a sentence, but the civil lawsuit is still its own separate problem. And the third lane is the social media circus surrounding Blueface, Dean the Great, training sessions, warehouse footage, and a constant stream of online conflict that keeps making it easier for the public to focus on drama instead of documents. That is why this story matters more than people think. It is not just about whether Chrisean Rock had a bad week. It is about what happens when a celebrity becomes so used to surviving controversy online that real legal proceedings start getting treated like they are just another round of internet chatter. Court is not Instagram Live. A judge does not care who went viral, who felt provoked, who posted first, or who had the better comeback. If you fail to show up, if you fail to respond, if you fail to challenge the claims in the right forum, the silence starts costing real money. Let's start with the judgment, because that is the update making the loudest noise right now. According to multiple reports on the case, a California Superior Court judge entered a default judgment awarding roughly $38,100 to Lashala Irby after Chrisean Rock did not appear and did not otherwise defend herself in the civil case. Irby alleged that she was assaulted at a January 2023 premiere event in North Hollywood, and she said the encounter began cordially before turning violent. Irby also said video of the alleged attack continued circulating online, which intensified the emotional distress she said she suffered. The judge did not give her everything she asked for, and that part is important. She had sought a much larger sum, around $250,000, but the court found the evidence did not support general damages at that level. Still, the judge concluded that the continued circulation of the video provided a reasonable basis for emotional distress damages, which is how the case still ended with a significant award against Chrisean Rock. That detail matters because some people saw the smaller number and tried to spin it like Chrisean Rock somehow won by not having to pay the full amount originally requested. That is not how this works. When you do not participate and the court still enters judgment against you, that is not a victory lap. That is the legal system basically saying, you did not even contest this, so we are proceeding without you. Chrisean Rock may not have been ordered to pay the full $250,000 Irby wanted, but Chrisean Rock still got hit with a judgment that exists because the case went unanswered. In other words, this was not a courtroom comeback. This was damage control by the judge, not exoneration for Chrisean Rock. And the procedural history makes it even worse. Earlier reporting said Irby had already been pushing for the default judgment because Chrisean Rock had not participated in the case, and there was even a dispute over whether the damages had been properly specified. Irby's side came back and argued that Chrisean Rock had been given adequate notice of the damages sought before default proceedings began. The larger point stayed the same through all of that. Chrisean Rock was not actively fighting the case in the way a defendant would need to if she wanted to block the plaintiff's narrative from becoming the main record in court. When one side is telling the story and the other side is functionally absent, the absent side is already losing ground. And if you think that should have been a wake-up call, here is where the pattern gets heavier. The public keeps mashing this judgment together with the James Wright Chanel situation, but those are not the same case. They are connected only in the sense that both involve alleged violence and both keep Chrisean Rock in legal headlines. But if you blur them together, you miss how serious each lane is on its own. In the James Wright Chanel matter, the civil lawsuit is still a live issue, and the allegations there were ugly from the start. Reporting on that lawsuit said Wright, who was associated with Tamar Braxton's show, alleged that Chrisean Rock struck him backstage at the Novo after conflict over performance expectations. The reporting described claims that he was left with facial cuts and 2 broken teeth, and that he needed medical attention after the alleged altercation. Wright's side framed the incident as an unprovoked assault, while Chrisean Rock later pushed back publicly and suggested false narratives were being created. That civil case is a separate matter from the Lashala Irby judgment, and based on the current reporting used here, James Wright Chanel filed claims but had not yet received a civil money judgment from that lawsuit. But now add the criminal side, and the picture gets more damaging for Chrisean Rock. Reporting on the criminal case tied to the November incident involving James Wright said Chrisean Rock entered a no-contest plea and was sentenced to 30 days in jail plus 12 months of probation. The same coverage said she was ordered to stay at least 100 yards away from Wright and from the Novo. That means even without the civil suit being finalized, the underlying event already produced a criminal case outcome with real penalties. So when people say, well, James Wright hasn't won money, that may be technically true in the civil sense based on current reporting, but it should not be used to minimize the fact that the incident already resulted in a plea, a sentence, probation, and restrictions placed on Chrisean Rock. And this is exactly where Chrisean Rock's image problem starts turning into a credibility problem. The more these incidents pile up, the harder it becomes for Chrisean Rock to frame each one as a one-off misunderstanding. A single messy incident can sometimes be defended as confusion, intoxication, exaggeration, or a chaotic environment. But when Chrisean Rock is tied to a default judgment in one matter, a no-contest plea and sentence in another, and still remains surrounded by ongoing public conflict, audiences stop asking whether one individual allegation can be disputed and start asking what the repeated pattern says about the bigger picture. That bigger picture is not only legal. It is behavioral. Chrisean Rock has been living in an ecosystem where spectacle often works better than explanation. Outrage brings clicks. Disorder brings clips. Every new confrontation gets absorbed into the content machine. Blueface says something. Chrisean Rock responds. Somebody leaks a live. Somebody else goes on a stream. There is a training session, a music argument, a warehouse dispute, an NDA threat, a fresh call-out, another round of comments, another wave of sides being picked. And the danger in that loop is simple: if your real life becomes content for too long, you can start treating content consequences as if they are real-life limits. They are not. That brings us to the Dean the Great side of this story, because some people are acting like that feud is just random side entertainment. It is not random. It matters because it shows how the Chrisean Rock narrative keeps getting pulled away from substance and back into spectacle. Based on the source material behind this update, the tension in that situation allegedly started over music during a boxing-related session, with Chrisean Rock wanting gospel music and Dean playing music connected to Blueface. What could have stayed a small disagreement turned into public accusations, clips, comments about disrespect, and even talk online about confidentiality and whether footage or private terms had been violated. Whether that ultimately becomes a legal matter or just more digital mud wrestling, the effect is the same: Chrisean Rock's name stays attached to conflict. And that constant conflict is not neutral. It changes how every new legal update lands. When a person keeps showing up in headlines tied to volatility, judges, juries, viewers, and even casual readers start processing new claims through the lens of accumulated chaos. That does not prove every accusation. It does not mean every opponent is telling the truth. But it absolutely changes the climate. Chrisean Rock is no longer operating in a context where people see a clean slate every time. Chrisean Rock is operating in a context where every new story arrives already carrying the weight of the last 5 stories. Now let's talk about the default judgment psychology, because this is the part fans do not like to hear. A lot of supporters believe avoiding a lawsuit means refusing to feed lies. They think silence starves the accusation. In online culture, maybe. In civil litigation, absolutely not. In civil litigation, silence can function like surrender. If you do not answer, do not appear, and do not put evidence in the record, the court can move forward without your version. That is what makes this almost $40,000 judgment feel so preventable. Even if Chrisean Rock believed Irby exaggerated. Even if Chrisean Rock believed there were defenses available. Even if Chrisean Rock believed the amount demanded was outrageous. None of that matters unless it gets put where it counts. So the case becomes a warning bigger than Chrisean Rock. It is a reminder that celebrity culture has tricked a lot of people into thinking perception is the whole game. It is not. Perception matters on the app. Procedure matters in court. Chrisean Rock may be able to spin a narrative online, may be able to energize fans, may be able to redirect attention with a live, a post, or a fresh round of Blueface drama. But none of that erases a docket. None of that dissolves a judgment. None of that undoes a plea. And yes, the judge refusing the full $250,000 does matter. It matters because it shows the court did not simply rubber stamp everything the plaintiff wanted. The court apparently looked at the request, decided the evidence was not strong enough for such a large general damages figure, and trimmed it down. That is important if you care about accuracy. But accuracy cuts both ways. The same judge still concluded there was enough support to award a substantial amount. So if one side tries to use the reduced figure as proof the allegations were meaningless, that spin goes too far. The court did not say nothing happened. The court said the proof did not justify the highest demand, while still justifying a meaningful award. There is also a branding problem hiding inside the legal problem. Chrisean Rock's public identity has long been tied to unpredictability, raw emotion, and non-stop attention. That kind of identity can be commercially powerful for a while because it keeps the audience watching. But in a courtroom context, unpredictability stops looking like charisma and starts looking like risk. Raw emotion stops reading like authenticity and starts reading like volatility. Constant attention stops protecting the brand and starts feeding every new allegation into a public archive that never really goes away. Chrisean Rock is learning that a persona built to dominate timelines can become a liability when institutions start reading the same pattern as instability. The James Wright Chanel lane carries its own separate warning. If the civil case there keeps moving, Chrisean Rock is not walking into an empty courtroom narrative. She is walking in with public baggage from a criminal disposition already on the books. Again, that is why people need to stop merging cases carelessly. Lashala Irby is one civil matter. James Wright Chanel is another. The Novo incident already had criminal consequences. The Irby matter ended in a civil default judgment. Those facts are different. But together they tell a rough story for Chrisean Rock. Unresolved conflict is turning into documented liability. And I think that is the part that should genuinely concern anyone who still wants to see Chrisean Rock get stable. Because this stops being gossip once court orders and judgments start stacking. There is a difference between a scandal and a pattern of legal exposure. Chrisean Rock can recover from headlines. Plenty of celebrities do. But to recover from this kind of spiral, Chrisean Rock would need something more than emotional live streams, clapbacks, or symbolic declarations about change. Chrisean Rock would need discipline. Real discipline. The boring kind. The private kind. The kind that does not trend. Showing up. Following orders. Separating personal chaos from legal risk. Cutting off the people, places, and habits that keep turning every disagreement into a public event. Because look at how strange the contrast has become. On one side, you have serious claims being discussed in legal language, damages, emotional distress, default proceedings, no contest pleas, probation conditions, stay-away requirements. On the other side, you have a content economy still packaging Chrisean Rock as if she is starring in an endless reality episode where every conflict just resets by next week. Those two realities cannot coexist forever. At some point, the court version starts overpowering the content version. And to be fair, some people will say Chrisean Rock is also a target, that she is easy to sue because she is famous, emotional, and polarizing. There is truth in the idea that celebrity attracts opportunists. Fame absolutely magnifies legal exposure. Fame absolutely creates incentives for people to attach themselves to your name. But that argument only helps if you are also doing the work to protect yourself. Fame is not a defense by itself. If anything, fame makes self-control more necessary, not less. The more visible Chrisean Rock becomes, the more expensive every unguarded moment can get. This is also where Blueface's shadow keeps making everything worse. Every time Chrisean Rock is pulled back into Blueface-centered drama, the public gets another reminder of the instability surrounding this whole universe. It keeps the emotional temperature high. It keeps fans tribal. It keeps distractions coming at the exact moment focus is most needed. And maybe that is why this latest judgment landed so hard with people who have been watching for years. It felt like the first truly clean translation of chaos into consequences. No screaming match. No caption war. No live interruption. Just a number on paper. And if Chrisean Rock does not treat that number as a warning, the next number could be worse. That is the real story here. Not just that Chrisean Rock got hit with nearly $40,000 in a default judgment. Not just that James Wright Chanel still has a separate civil case in motion after the criminal case already ended with a plea and sentence. Not just that Blueface and Dean the Great and every other orbiting conflict keep feeding the content machine. The real story is that Chrisean Rock is reaching the point where the internet cannot absorb the damage fast enough to hide it anymore. And notice something else. The public story of Chrisean Rock is still usually told through moments, not mechanisms. A viral clip. A cry on live. A fight. A diss. A scene. But the institutional story of Chrisean Rock is being told through mechanisms now. A filing. A hearing. A plea. A probation term. A stay-away order. A judgment. Those mechanisms are slower than gossip, but they are heavier than gossip. They do not need to trend to matter. They do not need fan approval to take effect. And once they start piling up, they can reshape a person's options long after the internet has moved on. So now the questions become sharper. Does Chrisean Rock finally pull back from the environments that keep producing these explosions? Does Chrisean Rock start treating legal process like the emergency it is instead of background noise? Does Chrisean Rock understand that being chronically discussed online is not the same thing as being protected in court? And maybe the hardest question of all, how many warnings does a person get before the system stops treating the chaos like celebrity mess and starts treating it like a fixed pattern? Because once that label sticks, everything changes. Judges watch different. Plaintiffs feel bolder. Opponents feel safer pushing forward. The public grows less patient. Even neutral observers begin assuming that where there is smoke, there is probably another file somewhere. That is what Chrisean Rock is fighting now. Not one allegation. Not one judgment. Not one old clip. A reputation for recurring turmoil that keeps finding its way out of the comments section and into actual proceedings. And this is why I think people should resist the lazy version of this conversation. The lazy version says, it is just drama. The smarter version says drama is how the audience sees it, but documentation is how systems see it. The audience may debate, laugh, pick sides, and move on. The system keeps records. The system notices defaults. The system enforces sentences. The system remembers whether you appeared, whether you complied, whether you violated, whether you were warned, whether you adjusted. Chrisean Rock still has time to change the direction of this story. That part is true. A judgment is serious, but it is not the end of a life. A plea and probation are serious, but they do not automatically define a forever future. Patterns can be interrupted. Spirals can be broken. But only if the person in the middle of the storm admits that the storm is real. And right now, from the outside looking in, too much of the Chrisean Rock conversation still sounds like content management when what is really needed is life management. And if Chrisean Rock does not make that shift, the danger is not just another embarrassing headline. The danger is cumulative restriction. More money owed. More conditions imposed. More limited movement. More legal vulnerability. More people willing to test what happens when they bring their claims into formal settings instead of social media. That is how a chaotic celebrity era slowly hardens into a compliance era, and not by choice. So if you strip away the fandom, strip away the hate, strip away the reaction clips and the livestream theatrics, what are you left with? You are left with a woman whose name is still commercially valuable, culturally loud, and socially magnetic, but whose legal and personal instability keeps threatening to eat the brand from the inside out. You are left with a celebrity who can still draw attention, but may be learning the hard way that attention by itself is not power if all it does is keep witnesses, plaintiffs, judges, and critics focused on the same recurring pattern. And maybe that is the hardest lesson in all of this. Viral attention can make a person look untouchable right up until paperwork proves otherwise. So tell me this. Was the nearly $40,000 judgment a wake-up call that finally forces Chrisean Rock to get serious, or is it just the first bill in a much bigger season of consequences? Do you think the James Wright Chanel civil case becomes the more dangerous long-term problem for Chrisean Rock? And how much of this spiral do you think is being fueled by the non-stop Blueface orbit and the constant public content chaos around her? Because one thing is clear now, the internet may keep recycling the spectacle, but the courts are starting to keep score.